There we go. I unmuted my mic, so I think everyone can hear me now. People able to hear me in the chat, feel free to let me know. If you're deaf to me, tell me and I'll try to fix it. This is Prophet Azad doing his first live stream. Probably looking a little different than I do because I have a human face and not a staticky face. I'm seeing that I'm muted. I know I was at first. If I still am, please let me know. Still no sound, or am I coming through now? All right, so I think I'm seeing people telling me they can hear me. Yes, it is hideous. It's different than what you're used to. So today I just wanted to do something a little different. Just because we are all a little isolated, I'm bound to my home. I don't know what your regulations are in your neighborhood. But I thought it'd be a nice time just to get together and chat, just to talk in person. So you have the opportunity to do that either by asking a question in the chat if I can catch it. It's going by pretty quick. Or you can feel free to call. There's a phone number on the screen. And you can call in, ask me about pretty much whatever you want, and we'll just kind of have an ongoing conversation. So I sound somewhat slow now. And my head is still a perfect oval. I hear a lot of people say that I'm not what they expected to see, generally that I'm older, which I'm not surprised. And I do get people either saying that I look like actual Zod or superheroes' fathers. So to start with, while I'm waiting for anybody to ask questions in the chat or to give a call, you can call that number on the screen. There's a meeting code you'll be prompted to enter, and then after that, you can just hit pound, and that'll get you through. And I'll do my best to take your calls in the order that they come in. How does the beard feel? It feels very much like facial hair. Pardon me. Having a little bit of a sore throat, which I'm sure everyone finds automatically alarming right now, but I think it's just seasonal. So we're going to be discussing a few things. I've already gotten some questions people had submitted ahead of time in my organized Prophet Azad fashion because you all know I like to put things on lists and cover them. I'm going to have put some questions up in the Static Vision thing, which is not made out of static, but I like the name, I suppose. I'll go through a few of those, answer them until we get other people asking other questions. How are you? I'm doing great. I'm talking to everybody. I saw another question. Where did you get your Zod jacket? The jacket that I use is actually just a very generic one from Costco. It's a Kirkland jacket. And it just happened to be one that I had met, that I had found and worn normally, and I just started wearing it on my channel, I guess. Who are you and what have you done to Prophet of Zod? I am an old guy, and I kidnapped Prophet Azad, I guess. I don't know. So, to go over a couple questions, we have some people obviously asking about the current situation with the coronavirus. Had some people ask some questions about my channel and just what I do on here, what life is like as a content creator, and then also some questions about general religious topics that people had questions about. So, yes, you can have a cookie, I suppose. I don't think there's any regulation against it right now, as long as it's in your house or you make a sensible trip to the grocery store to get it. So, going over a few of the initial questions. Let me get rid of the Prophet Azad logo here. The first question somebody had asked was about people ask a lot about whether it's hot in my outfit. It is sometimes. I do wear a jacket over a little fleece thing. Oh, and yes, I do have the Prophet Azad sign back here. A subscriber had sent that to me, handmade it as I understand, which was a very nice gesture. But let's see. A lot of questions I get include, let me skip ahead to one. Can you tune your face to local broadcasts, or is it always static? Which I assume is just a joke about my face being static and not needing to be corrected. Obviously, I can make it look like whatever this is, for better or for worse. So yes, I am a human in real life. That's just an effect I do. Why I do it is a long story. It has more to do with just how I present my content than with like trying to hide my face or anything like that. But regardless, after this live stream, I will still receive comments to almost every video saying I'm a coward and I need to show my face. So whatever. Another question, is the hood green or blue? If you know anything about keying effects, you know that usually you pick a green or blue background and key it out to make an effect behind it. I do something like that to create my static. So I do wear a mask over my face, and then I take the color out. It is not green or blue, though. I don't know what's going on with my image. Are you seeing is anybody seeing a split in my screen? I'll proceed regardless. So what I use is actually a orange mask here. It's literally just a stocking cap, and I put it over my head, and I have a little eye hole which I peek through so I can see well enough to function. And if you want to see what the whole thing looks like, if people are actually curious about this kind of nonsense, this is what it looks like when I shoot here. So I just sit there in front of a blue screen with my hat pulled all the way over my head and a jacket over a fleece, and I mime talking to you. We do have a couple of calls. I am feeling really weird just sitting here talking to the open air. So I'll go ahead and bring a person or two on here real quick. When I bring you on, just give me your name and ask me whatever question you have on your mind. Hello. So I have you on.
Hey.
Hey. Yeah, go ahead and give me your name and tell me what you have to talk about.
You can call me, I guess, I don't know, Zabel. We'll go with that.
All right, that works.
Yeah, so first off, big fan. Really like your work.
Well, thank you.
Your team ups with Apology are particularly fun.
Oh, cool. I appreciate it.
So my question was, so in the Into the Zodverse, which is one of the best videos you've done so far, if I may say so.
Thanks.
We saw, what was it? We saw Zod Noir. What were the other Zods we saw?
They were Old Zod and Cartoon Zod.
Okay.
First off, real quick,
well,
do you have a instance of this video playing in the background?
No, I'm no.
Oh, okay. For some reason, we're picking up an echo.
That's odd. It might be a problem, but I don't think it is.
Okay, yeah, go ahead, though.
So, will we see Zod 2099?
I might be embarrassed to ask, but what is that?
Oh. Okay, so the Into the Zodverse thing with the parody of Spider-Verse, right?
Yeah, that is. Yep.
And you know, at the end of Spider-Verse, post-credit scene at Spider-Man 2099,
Oh, so that's that continuation or sequel.
Yeah, yeah, that was at the end where he got the guy with the blue suit with a red spider on the front, and they did the whole parody of the '60s Spider-Man cartoon.
Where you have the two people pointing at each other.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I might do that. I'll just have to see. I don't know if I've exhausted the possibilities of the Zodverse thing, and that actually was a huge amount of work. And as
Oh
much of
yeah, no, I'm sure it was.
much as a kick out of it as I got, it really didn't get a lot of views for the amount of work I put into it.
Oh,
So it's
that
encouraging
sucks.
to.
That was,
Sorry, go ahead.
oh no, I was just saying that sucks. That was a good video.
Yeah, it's encouraging to hear someone really liked it. I think the length is one of the issues. But
Yeah.
yeah.
How did you get like your family to be the other Zods, or did you like do some kind of editing where you recorded one at one point, another at a different time, and just kind of spliced it all together?
Yeah, I acted out the three live people. So
Huh.
myself, and then the old and the noir one, and then of course the cartoon one was just superimposed.
Yeah. One last thing, and then I'll let you be.
Yeah, go ahead.
Wow, what was the video with the guy who what was the channel? The Catholics or the Antichrist one? What was that channel called?
Oh, that is called Hope Through Prophecy.
Yeah, I actually I forget what I was looking up, but I caught the Pope is the Antichrist video before your video came out. I was like, huh, I really hope someone reacts to this soon, and then lo and behold, the video came out. So I wouldn't mind seeing more stuff like that of just reacting to that kind of crazy shit.
Yeah, I'll probably end up doing a response or two to him in the future still.
All right. Probably should let someone else get on the phone here.
All right, well, thank you for calling.
All right, keep the good work. Wash your hands, I guess.
All right, thank you.
Bye.
Yeah, I was picking up a bit of an echo. I'm not sure the reason, whether maybe I was on a speakerphone or there was an instance playing in the background. But if you do call, please both make sure you're not on speaker, and then also make sure that anything you're watching this on is muted so you don't pick up an echo of me. We have another call in the queue, so I'll go ahead and take you. You are unmuted, so go ahead and...
I am unmuted now.
You are, yes.
Okay, thank you. My name is Steven, and I'm first off, your channel has helped me through a lot since I've been through a lot of religious trauma, like your Enchanting Q stuff. And second off, I'm wondering if you're ever going to be covering the ATI slash IBLP group by Bill Gothard.
Oh boy. Well, first off, I appreciate that. That means a ton to me, because having gone through my background as a former Pentecostal fundamentalist and everything, more than views and everything, it means a lot to me that what I do actually speaks to people's experience. So I appreciate that feedback from you. I'm not sure the name of the organization that you're talking about, but I've heard of Bill Gothard. In the church background I went to growing up, I had heard of him, and really I had just known him by name. It was a name I'd heard floated around, and then I'd heard some things that were pretty horrific about him and his teachings.
Yeah.
But honestly, I couldn't tell you much about it at this
like
stage.
They're really extreme.
Is it very is it very authoritarian kind of family
Yes.
structure?
Yeah, it's biblical it's biblical patriarchy.
Yeah, that sounds
Yeah,
familiar.
that's one of the core beliefs.
I would be interested in doing more about that. I've heard there were a lot of things from my childhood that I hear names floating around and things like that.
Yeah.
But I don't really know what they are until I look at them with fresh eyes as an adult. So I would be very interested if you wanted to email me some information about it, some links to some of the material they have out, or especially if they have videos. I would love to address that at some point.
Yeah, sure. I will probably send you an email then. That's great. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be perfect. I'm always looking for fresh ideas to respond to. People seem to like response videos, and as long as I can address something that's fresh and relevant and will kind of help people process their former religious experiences, I'm definitely happy to have new ideas.
Yeah. And with the group, like there's not really like many people from the organization like online that have a platform. It's more of a hidden organization that has covered up lots of abuse and stuff. It's really
Yeah, that was sadly one thing I had learned after growing up was that the church environment I'd grown up in was much more severe and sometimes semi-abusive than I had known. Fortunately, I had the fortune of growing up in a family that was much more, I don't know if lenient, but much more sensible, and so I was shielded from a lot of it. But yeah, I would definitely be interested in hearing more. So yeah, if you could shoot me some information, I would love to hear more about that.
I think that was about it. Thanks for letting me call in, and have a great rest of your day.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thanks for calling.
Bye.
Bye. Yeah, that was the last caller that we had in the queue for now. So if you do want to get through and speak to me in person, I'm also trying to keep up with the chats, but it's hard to do. So certainly feel free to either try to push through something in the chat or give me a call. Until then, I think I'll look through a few more of the questions people had submitted ahead of time. Oops, wrong thing there. We did have some questions about how things are going with the current outbreak. This one says, what are some of the ways you can stay positive during this situation, and what possible silver lining can we find in the middle of the chaos? Sorry about that. As far as silver lining, I'm not really sure. I don't know that I see a lot of good coming out of this. There might be. But I think the way to stay positive and to keep your wits about you is just take things one day at a time, which sounds kind of trite. But really, when it comes down to it, we can deal with the things we can control. Beyond that, if you try to focus too much on everything and think too far down the path of where things can go, really all you're going to do is get worked up. So the only advice I can have, there's not much to it, and it's pretty simple, is just think one day at a time. Take the measures that you can to keep yourself safe and keep people around you safe. Beyond that, I think it's just waiting and seeing what happens. I think really part of what we can do is just recognize that a lot of things we see around us that look shocking aren't necessarily as bad as we think we are, and keep things in perspective, big picture. It can feel shocking to show up at your store and see aisles of things gone. That doesn't mean that things are all as barren or that we're really running out of things. It's just that people have more of they're stocking up a little bit more and emptying the shelves, but the supply chain is still in place as far as I understand. So I think just keeping that in mind, taking it one day at a time, and recognizing that for the most part, things will probably be okay. If things get a little bit weird or our lifestyles change, we're just going to have to adapt to that when it comes. So I don't know if people have other feedback beyond that, but that's generally how I handle it. And it's really all you can do at this point. We'll go through a couple more of these questions. What to do with the attitude of pull yourself up by the bootstraps in this situation? This is one of a couple things that I see people saying, and say so if you have heard this in the in the chat. But I'm seeing a lot of really weird things being said in like social media, not in my Prophet Azad circles, but in my personal one, which is a lot more conservative and religious, a lot of very bizarre reactions to this. And I don't know if pull yourself up by the bootstraps is one of those. I don't see that too much, but there is a certain, there's definitely a lot of people saying that that this has been exaggerated, that it's a plot maybe by the Democrats, that everything down to weird conspiracy theories about how it's actually 5G towers causing this intentionally by somebody. I don't know. People got in all kinds of weird directions. And I'm sure pulling yourself up by the bootstraps is one of them, that everybody should just deal with it on their own. I don't know what to do with it, other than just keep expressing what's wrong with it, I suppose. You're not going to turn somebody around who says something like that. You're not going to change their mind. There are probably deep-seated attitudes behind that, and all you can really do is chip away at that mentality, converse with somebody like that for the sake of the people who are looking on, and hopefully just continue putting more sensible and sensitive, I guess, things out there, and hopefully change the atmosphere of the conversation a little bit. Yes, conspiracy nuts definitely are making the rounds. I'm hearing strange / depressing things from people that I've known for a long time that I honestly would have thought I'd hear from, some crazy person who lives down the end of a desert road on Art Bell. But yeah, whatever. Sorry about the echo earlier. I didn't hear it on my end. No worries at all. That kind of stuff happens. One more COVID thing, and then I think we have a couple callers waiting, actually. So here, I'll get to you guys pretty quick here. What has changed about my life in this neck of the woods? How are you and your family staying sane? So I live up in Alaska, for those of you who don't know, and things are a little different up here. For one, people are generally, I think, friendlier up here. There's all kinds everywhere. There are some people with weird opinions. Everybody panics. Everybody buys too much toilet paper. I don't understand walking by, rushing by food and looking for toilet paper and growing despondent after that, of all things. But yeah, it's been, I don't think we've had the same kind of shortages that people are having down in the States. We'll have a more or less stocked store, but then you'll round a corner and find the dry goods empty, or maybe the canned goods, rice and pasta and stuff like that. But most other sections are pretty well stocked. You can't find paper products, of course, because I don't know, wiping your butt and wiping off counters has become a weird priority. I don't totally understand that. But yeah, it's a little bit of the weirdness up here. I don't know if it's to the same level as everywhere else. Again, Alaska has like two types of people, I would say, being really crassly simplistic about it. I would say that we have kind of weird right-wing, live out in a cabin types, and then we have kind of granola hippie types. And in general, people here look out for each other. I'd say more than in most places. We do have a single supply line that runs through the port of Anchorage, so everything relies on that. But really, that falling apart is totally different from anything related to the coronavirus or people stocking up. So I don't know. I'm currently if you're wondering about me personally, I'm currently in a situation where I'm working. My job is considered essential, and we're actually more busy because I work for a place that distributes internet equipment. And so there's a huge demand for right now. So just kind of plugging along, I guess. I'm going to switch over to calls. So, oh boy, we got a couple of them. Sorry to keep everyone waiting here. All right. I have unmuted.
Hello.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yep. Sorry, I don't know how to identify who I unmuted without reading your phone number on the air, and I don't really want to do that.
It says, I heard a voice that said you are now unmuted, so presumably nobody else heard that voice.
Yeah, I would assume not. Okay, so, yes. You have been unmuted. So.
That is how I knew it.
Good.
Exactly. So you're not hearing an echo or anything from me, right?
Nope, it sounds all good.
Fantastic. So I've been a fan of your channel for about, I don't know, since about November or October or something. I'm relatively new to the whole atheist YouTube scene, but I'm really excited about it. I think you guys are great. I'm a patron of yours and Apologia and Shannon's and Mr. Atheist, but after that I run out of money. So
well, I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was just, so probably you've answered some of these questions in other videos, but is this, I just wanted to like generally know about if this is your full-time job, what are your plans for the future? And yeah, that sort of thing.
This is not my full-time job. I have a regular 40-hour-a-week job that I go work. This is just something I do on the side. I have a wife and kids and stuff like that, and so I don't really want to rely on YouTube to keep us all afloat.
Yeah, that's sensible.
Yeah, and it's basically, and this, I had a question about this that had been submitted ahead of time too. So the role this plays in my life right now is I work a regular full-time job. I have a couple days where I'm home because I work 4/10. So I have a couple days where I'm home and where my kids were at school. Not now currently, obviously. But that's usually when I do YouTubing. So producing a scripted video every week is a lot of work. Especially once you get good voicing in and effects and all that stuff. And it is a rush, but I really enjoy it. So I end up just working through breaks at work and, in evenings when I get the chance. And then mostly on a couple days when my kids aren't home and I'm home by myself, not ignoring anybody. So that's essentially the role it plays in my life. So I don't know if that answers your question. I don't really ever intend to go full time. And
that makes sense.
My wife would rightly get very nervous if I started talking that way. So, but
it's an entirely new, profession, I guess.
Yeah, you're putting a lot of eggs in one basket, and things can go north or south really quickly on YouTube for a lot of different reasons. So, I think it's best.
And you have to live and die by the algorithm anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
You already have to do that.
Yeah.
I did have another question, which I'm sure you have answered before, but you're obviously not unwilling to show your face.
Mm-hmm.
You're showing it right now. What was sort of the thought process that led to that decision?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It started, I wasn't really sure if I was going to show my face, but going back from the very beginning, I at least had flashes of it. I never really thought that anybody in my personal life was going to stumble onto a Prophet Azad video anyway. And at this point, people know my face and my name. I'm not going to just go up blurting it out, but it's been associated with different things. So it doesn't really have anything to do with hiding my identity. It's more how I like to present my content. And so I'm very scripted. I have a specific way of saying things that I think comes out better when I have a chance to consider and edit and then read it off word for word with a certain specific cadence and stuff. And so I just like the quality
like logic.
Yeah, exactly. And he's actually articulated some of this too, that he does it for the same reason. He likes to read it off on a scripted basis. It helps with editing because whenever you can adjust the timing of how you say things without having a lot of jump cuts in your video. So it's just for those reasons. Also, I'm playing a character when I do it, I think, which is why people are surprised to find out that I'm oldish looking. And that having a static face allows me to do some little sarcastic things that would look really corny if I was trying to act them out with my face. And so, being a faceless person miming things, it helps me do a little bit more stuff like that. So that's
okay.
Generally in a nutshell.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Any other questions at this point? I don't want to rush you along. But we got a lot of calls in here. I want to.
No. If you got other calls, go along to the other calls. Fantastic. Right. Thanks.
I appreciate you calling. Thank you very much. Real quick, I am seeing a couple. I'm new to this stuff. streaming and keeping on top of everything. So if you're super chatting, I'm trying to get to you. I had one saying, here in Georgia, we are full of people blaming Obama and saying it's just a flu. They are staying out and about. That is super unfortunate. That's one of the not necessarily conspiracy things. It can be rooted, but yeah, blaming Obama is pretty much automatic without getting too deep into politics. I think there's maybe not in the entire right, but there is an element of the right, and there might be a version of this on the left too, I'm not sure, that is basically centered on a narrative of disliking certain people and acting out a few grievances that were mostly based on talk radio. This is purely anecdotal, and it's based partly on my experience of somebody who used to be conservative and listened to talk radio, things like that. So yeah, it's unfortunate, but doesn't really surprise me. And I really wish people would at least not act on those opinions and stay inside when necessary. I also have a question from the Gaytheist. Besides your content, how has growing up Pentecostal affected the kind of person you are, if that makes sense? Boy, that's a big question. Growing up Pentecostal is a very unusual experience. I was a little bit of a fish out of water in the Pentecostal movement. It took me a long time, and I've talked about this from time to time. It took me a long time to be able to speak in tongues, and I was very ashamed of that and kind of, I don't know. I felt like there was something wrong with me, and I was kind of trained to think there was something wrong with me. There's a whole line of thinking behind Pentecostalism that involves more direct appeals to immediate authority, reliance on intuition and gut level feelings, and putting the authority of God behind it, whether it's within you or someone else. And that leads to a lot of weird thought processes. And I can't tell how much of those linger to me or those reactions stick with me. But I don't know if it affects me super deeply because I had trouble fitting in that environment, and I've always been a little bit literal and analytical. So, yeah, I don't know how much that really impacts me. I'll pick up another call here. I guess you'll hear when you're unmuted, so I'll quit asking you dumb questions about if you know you're on. Hello, you are on the air if you heard that you were unmuted.
Hello?
Hello. Hi.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Hi. Hi. I don't really have a question per se, but I just wanted to call in and kind of like the other guy was just letting you know that your videos kind of meant a lot to me when I was coming out of my faith and everything like that. And I mean, you, Shannon Q, non-stamp collector, even like Hugo and Jake and things like that, or Hannah and Jake now. But like, yeah, I mean, I've always liked how you've got a really interesting way to put things. You know, you can be sarcastic, but also, not too offensive sometimes either. But, you can put it right on the mark there.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. It's what I go for. I think I've become a little more sarcastic, and, I think you're hitting on something, and it's nice to hear because I like to go for a little sarcasm, but also be a little reasonable and sensible and understand the other side. And it's all targeted at what you're saying, to help people process things that they've grown up with and that maybe still stick with them and eat at them a little bit. So yeah, I really appreciate that. And that's what I shoot my content at.
Yeah. Well, it's going great from my end. So
well, yeah, I appreciate that very much.
All right. Well, I don't really have much else to say. Just want to say thanks and keep up the good work.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Talk to you later.
Thanks. Bye.
All right. I'll go straight to another one. Hello. You are on.
Hello.
Hi. How you doing?
Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. Yep.
Oh, perfect. I'm doing great. My name is Josh. Thanks for doing this live stream. I appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, of course. Thanks for calling.
So real quick back, I'll try and make my question make as much sense as possible, although there's a lot of things going through my mind right now.
Sure.
But so I grew up as a fundamentalist, young earth creationist, Church of Christ Christian, for 19 years. And it was just about a month ago that I deconverted and now consider myself an agnostic atheist, which only a couple close friends know and not my family.
Yeah.
And it's been videos like yours. I'm sure you've heard this a lot, but it's videos like yours, and there's a countless other people who also make great content on YouTube, and I was just wondering, so whether you're making a video or just having a conversation, in real life, what's the method you use to get to the point where you feel comfortable or confident in making an argument or, being able to support your arguments? How do you normally go about that?
So how do I go about articulating what I have to say, basically, to be effective? Or
yeah, I guess, how do you get to the point where you feel confident in what you're saying? Does that make sense in the arguments that you're presenting?
Yeah. Really, that's just an ongoing process, I think, of exposing yourself to the issues, of engaging in conversations with people. It's like riding a bike. It takes practice. You just have to get used to it. And so really, it's like anything else. The more you practice, you get a certain expertise in understanding the issues and how to articulate yourself with them. And I guess confidence is a whole other thing too, like getting confident in conversation and stuff. Part of it is getting to understand yourself and how you think. A lot of my content, a lot of the things I explain just have to do with having analyzed my own thought processes from when I was a Christian and then coming out of it. A lot of what I talk about is kind of meta communication. I don't know if that's exactly the right word, but it's about understanding how I think internally and how I've processed things. And I don't know, there's this whole nebulous thing where believers, how believers engage with outside information and how they react to it. It's a whole huge thing to unpack in and of itself. And so I don't know, I'm kind of going down a rabbit trail, but a lot of it is.
Yeah, sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. If you want to direct me towards something else, feel free to definitely go ahead.
Well, one other question I had that's entirely unrelated, but is still important. I have a close friend that's also going through a process similar to what I am, right, or what I did recently. And although I don't think atheism is necessarily linked to anything besides just not believing, in God.
Right.
It does open up the door to nihilistic thoughts, I think, in a way that having a religion does not. And I was just wondering, how would you help somebody who's struggling out of a faith respond to those nihilistic thoughts and maybe get to a better place mentally?
Yeah, that's a really good question. First off, to get at the core of the first thing I didn't really touch on really well. In any situation, being confident in what you're going to say and then saying what you mean to has to do a lot with the person and where you expect to land in the conversation with them. So if it's family members and friends or whatever, you just need to think, where am I going to get by the end of this conversation? You're not going to convince people God does not exist or even necessarily move them closer in that direction. In a lot of my interactions with people I know, it's generally about building understanding, helping them understand me a little bit better. If I'm fully honest, me making sure I still understand them well, because we have a duty to understand religious people too, and to understand where they're coming from and not mischaracterize them. And that's an ongoing process for all of us. So I don't know. In most conversations, it's going to be different. I speak a lot differently to believers in my life than I do on my channel. Because in my channel, I'm targeting people who are coming out of religion, and I think a little bit of sarcasm is beneficial to them, kind of knocking down the bully that they've dealt with in their life that would be totally inappropriate in a conversation with a believer. So that's kind of addressing the first thing. The nihilism thing, I have to admit, when somebody says that, my guard goes up a little bit, because that's so often an accusation against us. I don't know if you've...
Oh, no, I don't mean it that way at all.
No, I know you don't.
No.
And I don't mean to, push back at you that way. But yeah, there's a lot of levels to that. There's the side where people call it, and even reasonable Christians will call it, an inevitable consequence of atheism, or, logical result of atheism. And I think what you're talking about is more, you've conceptualized, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you've conceptualized your morality in terms of religion, right? And so,
I guess for me, I've been able to, get past that, not really dive into the same hole that my friend did. But for them, they were depressed, and religion gave them a source to, I guess, to place that depression onto, a different kind of hope. And now that that's been taken away, I guess, that's leading into nihilistic thoughts. Not because atheism necessarily leads to nihilism, but I was just wondering, what's the way that you would kind of help somebody reground how they perceive, what's good and what's, purpose is, when that fundamental aspect of how they perceive the world has been taken away.
Yeah. That's something that just takes time. And that's part of what my channel, and I think a lot of others are there to support people with, is it's just an ongoing conversation of reconceptualizing why we're moral, why life has meaning. Those are the kinds of questions, right? That if you trying to tackle those from a new angle, is that kind of the part of the issue of avoiding nihilism? Am I hearing you correctly?
Yes.
Yeah. So I think you're going to feel that at first. And that's really part of what we need a support network for people for. And that's why we need online content. And that's why I'm glad we have a variety of it. Like I've said before, I would rather have a scattering of some odd thousand to some odd hundred channels out there than for me to be the only one and have, 1 million subscribers or whatever. I would rather have a variety of voices out there speaking to different people in different ways, because we need that support network. And I don't think there's one answer to that, because it comes from different places to different people, and communicating an answer that will work differently for different people. I don't know if that makes sense.
Okay. So like, I guess to kind of what you're saying is, well, one, everybody's coming at it from a different angle, and two, I guess just having the community there and kind of just enduring it might get you past that point over time.
Yeah. And I'm giving a really broad answer because there's a lot to it, but if I were to boil it down, I would just see coming to understand that life does have meaning, even if it's temporary. That we do have this conceptualizing. Sorry, part of it is understanding what you're really doing when you conceptualize even religious morality. Really, even within Christianity, your obligations and your morality and your sense of meaning come from most of the same places that they do for a secular person. Your morality toward God is just conceptualizing a feeling of obligation to another being. And it's consolidating a lot of feelings of obligation or attachments we have to people who taught us about God. And he's really an amalgamism. I probably didn't get that out and wouldn't know how to if I tried again, but a collection of different ideas we've heard from different people and different attachments we have to them. And so when you really understand that when you're interacting with God in your head, you're interacting with people that you were attached to, and you can have that exact same sort of obligation to other people, and it means just as much as you have to God, and that's just as much of a basis for morality. And whenever looking back at your own past, whenever a teaching in the Bible clashed with empathy-based morality, your obligation to other people, you always try to find a way to reconcile that, right? No, very few people think, oh, that's great that they just slaughtered. They try to come up with some answer. And what drives that is a general sense that even if you don't consciously think it, empathy toward other people is really what's driving your morality. So I think a lot of that core value is there already. It's just understanding
misplaced.
Yeah. And so it's just an ongoing process of understanding what that really is, that it always has been there, and it's just coming to recognize it. So I think if you can just sit there and introspect and see what was always there to begin with, a Christian doesn't really conceptualize morality much different than I do in the way it acts out their day to day. There are some exceptions. I'm speaking broadly, but yeah.
I really, really appreciate that response. I hadn't heard anything like that, and I think you put it in a really good way. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Is there anything else? We probably should wrap up so I can get to other people, but do you have anything else before we part?
Yeah, I didn't mean to take up so much time.
No, you're good. I'm the one who did it, so it's my fault if anything. But you asked some good questions I think were worth covering. So.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, let's see. If you don't mind, I could need to take a little bit of a break here. So if y'all don't mind, I just need like 5 seconds to get up. Well, probably more like 15, 20, 30 seconds. I'm going to put the music on. You can listen to Prophet Azad music, and I'll be right back. If you're on hold, I will be right with you. I apologize, but I need to get up for just a moment. And I was muted on top of everything else. Sorry about that. All right. Hopefully everyone can hear me now, and I'm not playing my background music. And I still am. Boy. And I was muted on top of everything else. Sorry about that. All right. I had to get up for a second. I had an embarrassing string of technical difficulties, which I think I have overcome. I had a window open that I did not know was open, and it was playing the music in the background. So, if you cannot hear me, just let me know. I think I'm functioning now, and I'll take another call. So, sorry for the delay. I had an emergency that's none of your business. And you are now on if you heard that you're not muted anymore.
Hi, I'm Tom from Denver, Colorado.
Hi, Tom.
And I've been watching your channel for quite some time now. Probably since mid last year. I have recently deconverted as well. Had a lot of problems with it because I grew up in Southern Baptists and my mom is pretty hardcore. I'm older, like yourself, and she's 70. I don't really want to try to convince her or do anything because she's old.
Yeah.
So anyway, I have had a question about something for some time. I know it's a little different than what the other callers are calling about. I've actually been reading my Bible a lot more now that I'm no longer a believer. But with this thing about free will and all that,
mm-hmm.
When we go to heaven, supposedly, what happens in heaven? I mean, are we just suddenly stripped of our free will and we spend the rest of eternity, and I mean all of eternity, just worshiping? And what good are streets of gold and a mansion? I mean, if everyone has one, what's the point?
Yeah.
I guess that's my point, my question.
And yeah, what in the world appeal is there to having streets made out of gold? Yeah. That's a really good question. It's one that I remember wrestling with when I was younger. It's just speaking from my experience.
Is it a denominational question? Do some denominations believe one thing and some others believe another, like eternal security versus you're saved forever? Or, I mean, you can backslide?
It absolutely must be denominational. I think it extends to that and becomes personal for a lot of people. There's the literal reading of heaven as, I think, a something cube-sized, thing in the sky that has streets of gold and all that stuff that nobody in the world would care about. And for some reason, that idea appealed to people when they were first writing the Bible. Somebody, I think it was George Orwell, but I might be embarrassingly wrong, wrote an essay about the evolution of heaven, actually, and said that it varies culture by culture to be basically relief from whatever people suffer from. So at some points, if a society is poor, heaven is a place of wealth. If people are like during the Industrial Revolution, when people were very overworked, heaven was a place of rest. Now in these times, I think people have, from my experience in the versions of religion that I grew up in, people more often pursue, like religious experiences, like emotional highs of worshiping God. It depends a lot on the church, but in the evangelical fundamentalist Pentecostal ones, that's definitely valued. And so they turn heaven into, I've heard it articulated as whatever you enjoy, that's what heaven is, or whatever means most to you, just some kind of sense of peace or whatever. And like you said, it is just worshiping God. So whatever emotional high you feel in church, which is essentially the high of going to a concert that's really rousing, but, misunderstanding those feelings, that is considered to be heaven, both because you understand that feeling if you're a certain type of Christian, I had trouble conjuring it, but I am familiar with it. But then also it's considered a virtue to feel that way about it. You know what I mean? Like you should want to worship God. And so I think they try to boil it down to that feeling, both because they can comprehend it, it makes sense within their theology, and really people kind of, in my experience anyway, dodge away from those questions. Not necessarily consciously, but just try not to think too hard about it and just try to set that on a back burner. Like,
I'm just going to see Grandma when I die, and that'll make me happy.
Yeah, it's gonna be whatever makes you happy. God will wipe away all your tears, so that takes care of your family members being in hell, all that kind of stuff. It just they come up with little platitudes that set it on a shelf and then forget about it. If I were to sum it up.
Well, I love your cartoons about that, especially the one about the guy that goes to heaven and his kid is in hell.
Oh, geez,
that was just gut wrenching and hilarious at the same time.
Yeah.
So anyway, I won't take up more of your time. I've always just wanted to hear a perspective on that from somebody who actually taught, and I thought it was interesting. So thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Keep doing what you're doing. It's awesome. You've helped me, and I'm glad. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thanks for calling.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, we'll move on to our next one. If you just heard that you're not muted, you are on with me, so go ahead.
Awesome.
Hey, how you doing?
Hello, Prophet Azad. I'm doing pretty good. You look like you're doing pretty good as well.
I am. I'm enjoying this. It's a lot of fun.
Awesome.
Yeah, so what questions do you have for me?
Okay. I'd like to share a response that you can give to Christians whenever they say, oh, atheism is just another religion.
Okay.
And I didn't make this up. I actually found this on the internet. It's called Yoism.
Mm-hmm.
And my God is the only true God.
Okay.
And I say that because my God is all the unknowns that we don't know about. And if you want to know real truth, you need to seek truth. And one of the best ways to find God is to use the scientific method.
Okay. So are you essentially talking about using different terminology to describe what God is, and then
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, instead of an omnipresent, he's everywhere, he knows everything. My God is all the unknowns. It's everything that we don't know about.
Okay. Yeah. That's interesting. I might hesitate to use that myself, but again, this always depends on the person you're talking to. Because that I think that expands the concept of what God is. But on the other hand, I think this always depends on the person you're speaking to, and how they're going to hear the word you're using. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So
actually, whenever I really do talk to theists, I used more of the epistemology, like Anthony Magnum-Bosco. Yeah. I really thought it was something funny that I had just come across. It's called Yoism, and they have a bunch of principles and stuff that I really agree with. It's aligned with humanism. It's just a funny thing that I came across, and I wanted to share it.
Cool. Yeah, and the more I think about it, I think I can understand what you're saying. Like, if they say you have a religion and a God, my God is...
Yes.
Yeah, so essentially what that does is that distinguishes them just having blind faith from, okay, fine, you say I have a God, I'm just pursuing evidence and my God will slowly unfold itself to me. Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
You got it.
That is
You got
pretty
it.
clever and pretty cool. Yeah, I'll have to think through that. You said it's called Yoism?
Yeah, they actually have. They used to have a website, but for some reason I can't find it anymore.
Okay.
But supposedly they have a Facebook. But I'm not on Facebook, so I don't know.
Cool.
They supposedly have an open source Bible, and it's to where everybody can come together and like work together these principles of like morality and all those the good stuff.
Yeah.
It usually gets talked about in our atheist inner circle or whatever.
Yeah, that's cool. I'll keep that in mind, and I'll have to look into that more. That's an interesting way to articulate the situation, especially if they want to, if they want to start equating the two.
Right. But I really enjoy watching your show, man. I'll let you get to the next caller, man.
Well, I appreciate
Thanks
it.
for having me on.
Yep, thank you. All right, let me find our next caller here. All right, if you heard that you're unmuted, you are on with me, so go ahead.
Hey, my name is Sohan. Thanks for all you do, and thanks for taking my call.
Yeah, thank you for calling.
I wanted to ask you a couple of things. Like one, I guess, is more personal. Like I'm a student at MIT, and I've been sort of running the secular organization here for a while, and have just generally been kind of very involved in promoting reason and atheism here. I don't know. Like sometimes I just kind of get really depressed. I mean, I'm a grad student, so I'm already in a state of perpetual depression. But there's also this thing where like all the religious organizations, all the religious student organizations have immense amounts of cash and all this manpower because of the whole asymmetry of the theology and everything, and the hellfire threat and the heaven promise and all that.
Yeah.
And it just seems like we are often struggling to muster that kind of scale, whereas there's all these institutes that are devoted specifically to apologetics in Christianity, in Catholicism, in Islam. And it just like feels like we're staring down this giant juggernaut. And I don't know, sometimes I wonder if, I don't know, that's just something I wanted to get off my chest. Like, I don't know if you have any perspectives on that or something.
So is it
inspiring?
Is it essentially that this just feels really daunting in the big picture?
It does, yeah. I mean, it just seems like on all sides, the Islamic institutes and student organizations and the Christian student organizations and institutes and the Thomistic Institute, that new that Catholic Dominican thing has come in, and it's just like religious, Ratio Christi and Alpha Omega and all these.
Yeah,
it's just everywhere, it seems.
Yeah, it is. And when I was in college, I was part of Campus Crusade. I hate to say in hindsight, we were the largest student organization on campus.
Oh.
And there was...
now it's Crew.
They started calling it Crew when I was in there too. Yeah, CRU, yep. That does feel really daunting in the big picture. And there is a lot of religion out there. It appeals to easy things in people. Every conversation with a new, at least fundamentalist, feels like an uphill battle. I don't know if that's part of it for you too, but you're starting from ground zero and untangling a huge
not so much.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, not so much fundamentalists. Just like apologists have this gigantic industry behind them.
Yeah. So I guess that's an aspect of the same thing. Like you can see it as how daunting it is to approach each person, but then also there's this huge push. And I think there's a couple ways to approach it. One, I think religion generally is on the decline. And while it is still very big, I think the more we have open information, the more we'll chip away at religious thinking, because it does rely on isolation and, keeping their people insulated from outside ideas. There's a reason a lot of Christian parents are neurotic about sheltering their kids and keeping them maybe in Christian schools, or at least limiting what they're exposed to, because those ideas don't stand up under scrutiny very well. And most people will at least secularize some, if not largely turn away from religion, if given the chance and exposed to general broad ideas. So I think counting on that to kind of move society in the right direction, or at least hold on to that hope, can help. The other thing for me is reconciling myself to the fact that religion will be with us. And it's kind of like Lord of the Rings. You're never going to finally defeat the bad guys. They're always going to come back. You're always going to be in a constant push against evil in that case. I wouldn't necessarily say we're in a push against evil, but you're always pushing back. It's always going to push back against you. And this isn't as much about winning a final battle to eliminate religion as much as it's about helping individual people. You know what I mean? And so my channel isn't even really meant to deconvert people or change their minds, as much as reach out to people who are already maybe on the fence or thinking through things, or maybe just came out of religion, and helping slowly change the mindset for at least some people. And I don't know if that encouragement helps or that perspective, but that's kind of how I stay grounded when it feels a bit much, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I try and hold on to that sometimes. Yeah, I'll try, I guess.
In the end, it's like being a doctor or whatever else. Nobody's going to save everybody. It's just helping who you can, I guess. So
I guess so. It's just that the asymmetry bothers me. Like it's so difficult to find professors and experts and like people who are willing and who can speak on like about atheism and stuff like that. Like there was one time I was trying to get like an early DNA, like RNA world biologist to talk about it, and he was saying like, well, I really liked you, but I think it'd be better if I waited till I got tenure before. I mean, it's just like it's not something that people maybe have an incentive or can be sufficiently incentivized to risk a lot of their to risk being associated with the movement, I guess.
Yeah, I think part of what you're talking about, maybe the gap between being just secular and not thinking about religion, and then being openly atheist or openly combative to religion.
Yeah, or not even necessarily combative, just like attack or like arguing specific things. Even like speaking for Darwin Day or something like that. Like it's ironic because like a lot of the apologetics, the people pushing apologetics and people pushing the Christianization of culture, they claim that the university is hostile to theism and it suppresses theism and everything. But there's tons of professors even at MIT who are devout theists and happy to speak about for the religious organizations on campus and around. It's just like the opposite of what they say.
Yeah. I'll wrap up with one thought real quick, and then we do have to move on to make sure I can catch everybody. Yeah. But yeah, I would say a couple things in addition. One, it's hard to, people don't really have the same incentive to speak up actively on the cause of atheism, because by definition that's being against something. And so sometimes getting people to understand why you're against something that they say maybe as benign or whatever, they don't maybe see the harm in it the same way we do. It can be hard to take that identity, and I don't think I really articulated that super well, but essentially we as atheists are for a lot of things, atheism doesn't really define us, but we see there being a need for atheism or anti-theism because of the effect of theism on society. And so there are a lot of people who might be very progressive thinking, not religious at all, and just do their thing and mind their business. And I really wish society were such a place that those people would be the default, and atheism wouldn't even exist as a word. And maybe that's part of the thing too. Part of it also is these groups exist because they need to group together and reinforce each other. And I think sometimes you see religion getting louder on the fringes the more secularized society gets. So I don't know if that's part of it as well, and if that's encouraging, but yeah, it's a big question, and it can be daunting.
Yeah, I guess so. They certainly are targeting like the top universities and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I definitely used to be on board the train with that, thinking the colleges are against us and everything. There's a big persecution mentality there to unpack, but yeah.
Well, thanks a lot.
Yeah, I don't know if I explained it to your satisfaction, but I appreciate your call. I do got to move on. Always feel free to write me or anything if you have any more questions, if I feel like I had to rush you through this or anything. So, but yeah, I appreciate you calling.
Yeah, thanks for taking the call. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'll just keep pushing through these. We still got several calls in. Feel free to jump on if you want to. I'm just going to keep taking calls from you guys. My hard goal will be to be done in a 2-hour window. I maybe wrap up earlier than that, depending on how I can endure here. But yeah, if you heard you're unmuted, you're on. So go ahead, please.
Hi, this is Steve. We've met before. I'm the host of Atheist News on YouTube.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, hi Steve. How you doing?
How you doing? Yeah, you played Atheist Jeopardy on my channel.
Yeah, I utterly destroyed the competition too, as I remember.
Yes, you absolutely did. And I was calling just because I saw you had this going on, and I was hoping to have just a quick conversation about the globalization of the world right now. Like, the world itself, it seems to be very connected more and more as time goes on. However, along with the globalization comes global problems that are difficult for, all these different bodies to overcome, such as human rights, climate change, or a lot of topics in that nature. Mm-hmm. Now, my question is, how do you think religion itself, how much of it do you think is tied just to the super ego of a human, in terms of, if we really want human rights to spread across different genders, how do we appeal to different cultures, such as cultures in the Middle East, when it comes to basic human rights and equal rights for women or the LGBTQ?
Oh boy, that's a good question. There's a lot to it. So, are you saying like with God being you said something about God being the super ego in our minds?
Right. Kind of like, I know I'm right because I have my God on my side,
Yeah.
And how do you think that the globe itself can overcome such obstacles? And it wouldn't even be tied to just religious beliefs, because it's the super ego. And when you look at a country like China, there's human rights issues there as well.
Yeah. I don't know exactly what super ego is terminology wise, but I think I get the gist of your question. This was actually the foundation of my closing argument in my debate with Greg Glyer. This was ways back in the day. We had a live stream debate on the idea of morality without God. I think what would morality look like in a universe without God? And basically in my closing, I articulated some of what you're talking about, and as an explanation of why objective morality from the basis of religion is actually harmful rather than helpful, because it does, whether you call it the superego or whatever exactly that means, it allows people to dig in and say that whatever impression they got from God can define morality, and really gives them license to behave however they want. And that doesn't give us a unifying a unifying ideal to, for example, to help us go tell a member of a radicalized Islamic group from the Middle East that cutting people's heads off is wrong. And not to pick on them, that could have been Christian at other points in history too. But yeah, is that part of the issue? Like, how do we tell them that what they're doing is wrong?
How do we bridge the gap? Because there's always going to be a counterpoint of it's just their culture, and we don't have the right to impede their culture. But at the same time, they're human beings at risk. Their climate itself is at risk.
Yeah, that's where I think secularism, and maybe you could articulate it as atheism, but basically secularism or secular humanism, that gives us really the one basis for bridging that gap. The one thing that allows us to tell people that what they're doing is objectively, and I cringe every time anybody says that word relating to morality, because it's so loaded and takes the conversation such weird places. But if you think that God is the objective basis for morality, then whatever it is that exists in your head that tells you what you want to think, basically you're defining morality by whatever little inclination you have, or whatever gut level reaction, whatever bias. And I'm sure they're totally familiar with this, and that's part of the problem behind your question. On
my channel, Atheist News, I'm constantly reporting on stories happening around the world about religion and atheism. And for example, we have in Malaysia and Bangladesh these massive religious gatherings, thousands and thousands of people to pray against the coronavirus. How do we say, please don't do that,
Yeah. And that's
when it's not.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying.
That's a big, huge battle. By the way, if you're listening to this, Atheist News actually is a really good. It's a small channel. I don't think it gets enough attention, and I actually tune into it from time to time because it's just a really good way to. You do a good job of consolidating a lot of stories and just giving people just a quick snippet picture of what's going on in the world. A lot of things you might not gather otherwise. So I just want to throw that out there real quick. And that is an honest blurb. I'm not just trying to, whatever, but
I'll send you the $20 later.
Yeah, sure. but yeah, I think that's a long, slow process. It's a matter of just secularizing the world to whatever extent we can, getting out there the basis that we do have an expectation that you're decent to people. Doing this in the face of radicalized communities is very, very difficult, whether that would be a severely radicalized, Middle Eastern Muslim one, or a fundamentalist, isolated one in the States who, wants to deny rights to LGBTQ communities or whatever, for no reason other than their personal religious beliefs. We need to convey that is not okay without feeding into their persecution complex. But really, it's not. We all live on a planet together, and we need to get across to people that starting from ground zero, we need to have respect for each other. I think we need to undermine the assumption that because somebody believes something, it's okay or valid or we need to respect it. Because that belief and the respect for that belief is what grants license to people then to act toward others based on whatever's in their head. And I think that's my terminology in this is very imprecise. I think that's the super ego or whatever you're talking about. But we need to take we need to take away that that entitlement to treat people how you want based on whatever it is in your head that you think God is, to undermine respect for that, and then to just broadly hold all societies to an expectation they treat each other.
A baseline, yeah. And that's where it comes into my whole globalization problem of it, is how do we, tell countries like Saudi Arabia or Iran that they shouldn't be arresting women who take off their hijab, And it's just when I see stories like that and I report on them, it makes me feel so helpless, to see this suffering happening, and there's nothing that can be done about it other than to, voice your opinion and hope for the best.
Yep. Yeah. And I think that goes with what we were talking about with the previous caller. that it's just going to be an endless battle where what you're articulating is a good point, that we can't just solve this instantly. And all we can do is take the big picture, long game approach, knowing that it's probably going to wax and wane. We're probably never going to see an end to religion. If we wiped out religion today, there would be, some other version of it that would come along later. So all we can do is take it one day at a time, like with the coronavirus. Take it one day at a time, help who we can help, and just have the big picture push in mind. And yeah, it can be hard because you and I both know putting out content regularly is a lot of work, and you're doing it for a goal, and you're not going to see an end result where you win. It's just an endless struggle. And, I appreciate you being part of that struggle.
Oh, thank you. I mean, it's just, there's a passion there that you feel kind of unfulfilled if you're not pursuing that passion.
Yeah. And you have to have that passion, not get frustrated by the fact that you're not going to help everybody and you're not going to completely solve the problem. And so it's a balancing act between holding on to that sense of urgency and that passion while understanding you're not going to win them all. And it's sad, but you have to be able to let those go. So
it's definitely a long game.
Yeah. But I appreciate you calling. I want to move on to get to some other people, but thank you very much for calling. And again,
thank you for the conversation.
Yeah. If you're new here, or not if you're new here, that made no sense whatsoever. But if you're not familiar with Atheist News, go check him out. It's a very straightforward but good collection of news stories from around the world of religious issues or whatever, and it's a good way to kind of be in tune with what's going on. So thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right, you have a good day.
You too.
All right, moving on to the next one. We have, I believe, 3 more in the queue. I'm getting close to wrapping up point here. I am an old man sitting at a table. Yeah. I'll wear out eventually, but I'll try to get through as many of you can. So I have 3 more. If you want to call, definitely feel free. I want to chat with as many of you as I can when I have the chance. So if you heard you weren't muted, you are on the air.
Hey, Prophet Azad, what's up?
Hey, how you doing?
It's your boy, Objectively Dan.
Who?
On the line. Stan. Objectively Dan.
What are you talking? No, I know.
Get out of here, Zod.
Yes,
Get out of here.
I know who Objectively Dan is. Dan and I met. I'm just teasing him. We've seen each other around. We met at Faithless Forum and tossed some ideas around in the community. So yeah, nice to talk to you, Dan.
Yes, and I don't know if we talked about this, but did you know I was also part of Campus Crusade?
You seem like the type, but I did not know that.
In my video with Anthony, I was literally out doing stuff with crew. With Campus Crusade.
Oh,
I
really?
did not know that you were also part of it. Yeah. So there you go. We need to talk about college ministries sometime because that's a whole other ball game, honestly. But I wanted to talk to you about something that somebody said to me recently that I kind of have had a canned response for, but I want to get your take on it.
Okay.
So somebody had recently kind of heard about my story and stuff, and they had heard, I was a Christian that kind of started doing stuff for like the atheist community of Austin and some other stuff. And they said to me, so like, I guess atheism is like your religion now. And of course, you kind of go into the whole thing where it's like, well, it's not really the same thing. But they're like, but, you do this thing, you do this show every Friday, like you kind of do these activities, you go to these events, you talk to these people, like, how is it different from religion? And, I always explain that having community isn't the same thing as having a religion, right? But I get that that's kind of confusing to people who aren't used to secular communities talking about, religious issues and stuff. So, like, I'm sure you've gotten it too, having a YouTube channel and stuff. Like, when people say, like, oh, like, atheism is your religion because you talk about it all the time and stuff, like, what's your go-to response for that?
I honestly don't hear that very much. But I mostly get the atheism's a religion and online barbs and comments and stuff like that. But boy, I would say, first off, you're watering down the term religion pretty far by the time you describe anything that's a gathering or anything that's expressing a point of view as religion. And so I guess I would ask, what does religion mean if it doesn't have some supernatural element, some element of worship of a god or whatever? You know, if
do you think?
Go ahead.
Okay, that's interesting. Do you think religion has to have a supernatural element and or a worship of a god to be a religion?
I feel like I'm gonna work myself into a corner if I say yes. So probably not precisely. I'm sure there's some other elements that can be drawn into it and still be a religion without having those precisely. I think something along those lines. I don't think it can be, if you start characterizing it as sharing any perspective or gathering for any reason, you've certainly watered it down to the point that it no longer really means much. When somebody throws out the word religion, they're almost always going to associate with some kind of church or supernatural gathering or worship, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's
sure.
That's what pops into your head. And so there's this illusion that you're being more reasonable or more thoughtful or expanding your definition beyond the obvious in a way that's fair to both sides if you call atheism religion. I mean, that makes sense, right? And that sounds like where people are coming from a lot of times.
I think so. I think colloquially, how people understand it is a belief in an unproven idea.
Mm-hmm.
I actually think most Christians are really comfortable with the idea that, yeah, I have this God belief, even though I can't prove it.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's actually really, really common. And I think that's, like I said, kind of a layman's understanding of it, even if, like, you know, a philosopher of religion might disagree with that. I think that's how a lot of people understand religion. Like, they have their religion that they go to or that they talk about on Sundays, and then the rest of the week they do their other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, I think it's kind of compartmentalized for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And it kind of revolves around a social group or activity, but also just like a belief structure that informs kind of their worldview and their actions. You know, like they might give to the homeless because they think that, that God is watching, or, you know, they're being compelled by the Holy Spirit to do something like that.
Yeah, I think you started to touch on something which is core to this, which is religion is the belief in something unproven, right? Or that we don't have evidence for. And that's really what hits on part of this, because this goes down to the whole, it takes faith to be an atheist too, or more faith to be an atheist, or however they say it, which I did my first dumb things people say to atheists about this. This is the core misunderstanding, is that atheism is saying something about the state of the universe, or declaring that everything came from nothing, or, you know, however they want to put it. Religions take the unknown and they try to fill it with something. So whether that's the origin of the universe or whatever, religions are trying to come up with these competing ideas and trying to explain the whole thing, right?
Yeah, I think if I think that depends on how you grow up, because I know a lot of folks, I don't know if this is how much it played into your story in particular, but I'm sure with other YouTubers we know, religion was an explanation for physical phenomenon. But to me, like the flood, or like why the earth the way it is, you know, like being 6,000 years old, stuff like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like specific physical origins to the universe. But to me, religion was always a moral philosophy, more so than an answer to, you know, what one might call scientific questions.
Yeah.
It was always an encompassing worldview that guided the actions that I undertook.
Mm-hmm.
And not really, it didn't really play the role, like, because I grew up believing in evolution. I grew up believing in all kinds of stuff that, you know, some might find heretical, but I still was compelled by what I assumed to be the Holy Spirit in guiding my actions. So to me, like, religion was definitely like what informed my moral compass. But like, as you know, and as other people talk about, like, it was also an extra explanation for other things too.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering, like, if we took like a cross section of like the United States, and I guess maybe there's been some studies on this, like how much religion informs their worldview. How many people would say it's more moral versus how many people would say, like, you know, everything else? Because I don't know.
Yeah, and I don't mean to say that that's the core thing that drives religion, but when people start to say that atheists have a religion, I see two components to it immediately offhand. One would be they see atheism as promoting an answer to everything, right? So
yeah,
this whole bucket outside what we can observe, you're an atheist or a naturalist, you're having faith in the concept that everything happens naturally without God. That's definitely a part of it, right?
Sure.
And so they're pinning on us the notion and the faith in the idea that all of it's natural. Sorry. That there's something about the beginning that we can explain or should be able to explain how the universe can pop into existence without a God doing it, which to them sounds absurd because pushing it back to a powerful being and then not thinking about it has the feeling of an explanation, even though you stop short. But just having it happen by itself, that feels even more absurd. And so I think to them, we have a feel of religion about us because they take atheism as saying we have that answer, where atheism is more, and this is where we're fundamentally different from the religious, we say we don't know, but we're not going to say it's your God. And so we just don't know what's out there, and we're not trying to fill that bucket of the unknown with whatever we're guessing. And so if that's one of the components of religion is that they have faith in something unproven, I think clarifying that we don't have that faith or that belief can kind of help work away at that misconception. You know, if we're sitting here on Earth, we discover what we discover as we see evidence for it. We're not trying to fill in the rest with guesses. And then the other side is, I think they say, and this goes to another topic of atheism being a worldview that informs your actions. A lot of them like to say that your lack of belief in God, or your belief that there is no God is probably how they like to phrase it, changes how you behave. And to that extent, it's a religion, right?
Yeah,
and
that's true.
And so to that, what I like to say is, in one of my other videos, I think it's Stop Pushing Your Atheistic Worldview, I compared it to a captain on a ship who he might not believe that Aeolus sent winds and Poseidon controls the waves and stuff. And to that extent, his lack of belief is guiding how he steers the ship and how he navigates through a storm. But that's not really belief in the unknown. He isn't taking on a belief in the fact that they aren't out there. He's just operating on the fact of what he does see around him and what he has seen demonstrated to affect the course of a ship or the lives of his crew or whatever. And so confusing acting on what you can see and tentatively accepting everything else and just acting on obligation toward other people or a scientific understanding of how certain discoveries or how certain behaviors affect society, there's no faith in that at all. But there's a little bait and switch, which some Christians probably do consciously and some not. It just is kind of triggered in their mindset. Take that to mean, well, since you're just acting based on this, you're acting on the absence of God. And I probably got a little convoluted, but I don't know if clarifying that helps, that we aren't, just because we don't insert your unproven thing and we act based on what we can see around us and based on our obligation to the people we can see and whose, the impact of our actions on them we can observe, that by definition is acting based on evidence, if that makes sense. And I rambled a bit, but I don't know if any of that helps.
No, I see what you're saying. I think it's like, a Christian can say, well, this Muslim has this unproven belief and this Hindu has this unproven belief. I don't know why an atheist would be any more confident in their beliefs than any other religion. And the truth is, as you know, that's based on a misconception that we have an active belief that there is no God,
Yeah.
which isn't necessarily how a lot of us kind of define it, right?
Yeah.
You know, we talk about a lack of belief in unproven or unfalsifiable claims because there's just no way to verify it. So yeah, like and I was under that understanding as well when I was a Christian. I thought to be an atheist, you made the active claim that there was no God, when really, you know, it was just this thing, like I had beliefs that I couldn't actually prove, that I should not have had the confidence in, right? Because they just did not have the same level of, you know, verifiability that I had with my other beliefs. So yeah, and it, again, that comes, and I know you got out of college, but you know, just to wrap it up, it just comes down to this idea where, yeah, we could completely deconstruct a Christian notion of an idea of atheism, and then another one's going to spring up. You know, there's so many different ways to tackle it that you kind of have to do it, you know, different ways at different times, because there's so many conceptions and so many ways you can kind of go through with these arguments. So,
and each person you run into is going to be starting from square one. They're not going to hear what you've explained 1,000 times to everybody else. And so you're untangling the ball of yarn in a really exasperating exercise every single time, really.
Yeah.
So I think that's just where being prepared and then having patience and having empathy for where the Christian or other religious person is coming from is really important. They're not being stubborn. They just haven't heard it yet. And so, yeah. But we don't all not wear garlic around our necks because we have faith that vampires don't exist. We've just seen that there are things that we know are out there and we take caution on, and other things that don't. And we don't react to every single thing that we don't react to every single danger that somebody can put into words despite a lack of evidence. And that's not faith in any other conversational context. So,
right. Yeah, for sure. But anyways, thanks for talking to me, and hope you have a great rest of your night.
Yeah, you too. Thanks for calling, and we will definitely have to catch up more later.
For sure. Take care.
Yep. Talk to you later. All right. We have one more call in the queue. I'm going to cover this one, and we'll probably wrap up pretty soon. If you do want to sneak in, though, I'm probably not going to turn you away if you show up. So this is your chance. Pop in if you want to. Otherwise, I have a hard wrap up in 20 minutes, a little less. Otherwise, I'll take this call and wind down, and we will say goodnight. So if you heard unmute, then yes, you are on. So hello.
Hello, Mr. Prophet Azad.
Hello.
Introducing myself. I'm just going to go by Luna.
Okay.
I'm from West Virginia. And if I say some weird stuff, it's because I have severe Tourette syndrome.
Okay.
Which is neurological condition. So I'm nervous.
No, don't worry about it.
I'm
nervous every time I get on live, so we're all in it together, right?
Oh, okay. Yeah. I like your butt. So I had like this conversation a while back with a theist, and I asked them, you know, a really strange question. Basically, the question was, why did God give me severe Tourette syndrome?
Mm-hmm.
And their answer was pretty much that God gives you no more than you can handle, blah, 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 all that stuff. And it was a terrible conversation after that. So I was wondering, how would you have handled that conversation if it was you asking that question?
If somebody told me that, if I asked why did God allow this thing to happen, and they said he never gives you more than you can handle?
Uh-huh.
Boy, that could be a big one to unpack depending on who you're talking to in the situation.
Yeah.
Because it gets to
kind
some,
of infuriated me a little bit.
Yeah, it gets to some personal things, and it depends on who you're talking to again, and what you're trying to accomplish in your personal relationship with them. But if I were to unpack that concept, I would say that there are things that, for one, how do they know that? How do they know who doesn't give you more than you can handle? Number two, I would say what does it mean for somebody to be able to handle something? You know what I mean? Like things, absolutely horrifying things happen on God's watch if he exists and is all powerful. And maybe you could argue that that person can handle it, but what does it really mean to handle something? You know what I mean? Like if somebody could be put through really deeply personal, horrifying things that can scar them for the rest of their lives, and what does handling it look like? And to just brush it off as saying, oh, they can handle that, to me seems rather callous toward what that person's dealing with. And it makes a lot of assumptions about what they're going through. And I would also say there are sometimes, I mean, if a baby's born with some kind of horrifying disability or cancer or something where all they're going to do is feel pain and die, what capacity did God give for them to handle that? You know what I mean? And what good came from that? Boy. So yeah, I would say that they're kind of making a presumptuous statement. They're only articulating what they hear said in Scripture, right? There's nothing.
Pretty much.
They have really no way to know that. And so they're just reiterating doctrine to you. So that's one thing you could bring to their attention is, yes, that sounds great to you. Maybe that works as an internal justification if you're just trying to reconcile what you believe on Scripture, but that literally means nothing to somebody in the outside. And if they can't explain it, if they can't tell you anything about how somebody can handle something or what that means to handle something, then their ideas deserve as much consideration as anything else that just somebody wrote down they can't explain, if that makes sense. It doesn't really bring anything to the conversation, and it deserves the same lack of regard as anything else somebody blurted out. But yeah, there are a lot of counterexamples. They really can't explain, I don't think, what it means to handle something or not. And there are some things that there's simply no good cause for. So I guess I would maybe bring up examples of that. But yeah.
That sounds good.
I don't know if that helped at all. There's a lot of stuff that's probably just mundane reiterations of stuff we've all heard 1,000 times, but that's a hard one. And it would be difficult to unpack. I don't know. Do you have any further questions based on what I told you so far?
Not based off what you told me so far. I did have one question that I was trying to ask in the chat earlier.
Oh yeah,
before
go
I
right
got
ahead.
enough courage to just call.
Yeah.
What advice would you give someone like me who wanted to start a YouTube channel? Because obviously I'd either have to just go with all the ticks in the video or cut them all out or some combination of the two. Because it's just a pain in the butt.
This is a big question, so I'll make it quick. I'll try to give you the quick rundown version. This is largely why I do my stuff without my face showing, and I pre-record it. I talk through a lot of my own stutters and vocalizations that I don't particularly like. And so, I sound probably a lot different on recorded than I do live, and that's because I compensate for a lot of things myself. So I'd say play to your personal strengths. Do whatever you need to do, whether it's editing your audio, using an avatar to compensate for whatever you feel like your weaknesses are and lets you put out your message the best way you can. From there, just have something clear you want to say. Show up just excited and happy to explain something to people, and don't expect to grow too quick, too fast. Be prepared for, plateaus or slow growth, because we all go through it. And just be ready to say something good and do it regularly, and have a consistent message that you think speaks to people. So don't know if that helps or if it's just too mundane, but yeah, that's the first thing I think of to say.
No, that helps. That helps.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thanks for calling. We have suddenly, once I said that we're wrapping up, I got several more calls. So, X-Cult Baby, I forgot to mention this, but she has very kindly been helping me tally the calls and keep track of them in order. X-Cult Baby, if you could please stop adding numbers to the list now. If you haven't called in yet, I've asked her to not add to the list anymore, and so you won't appear on the list at this point, and I'll work through the ones we have. And I apologize, but I'm going to have to try to blow through you guys pretty quick. So be ready with a quick answer or a quick question, and I'll try to get through it quick. And if you feel like I didn't really cover something that you just feel like you need to know more about or could use more help with, please remember you can always email me and I'll try to follow up with you. So with that, I'm going to rush through the rest of you, and I do need to get done within about 10 minutes here. So let me find our first person. You are on if you heard that you're unmuted. Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, my name is Gabriel. I want to ask you a quick question. My question is, what is the attitude of new atheism in general towards philosophy?
Oh. I think that's, I don't really know that I have an answer for that. I think atheism, including new atheism, is simply lack of belief in God. And so I've seen differences of opinion on this within the community. I don't think by definition there's really going to be a unified answer to it. Atheists are kind of like herding cats. We're just an answer to one question, which is a mundane thing to say at this point. But I don't think there's really a unified opinion on that. And I think there's some division on it, but really I'm not even in tune with that. So I apologize, but I don't really even know how to speak to that question.
Okay, well, thank you.
Sorry to be a disappointment. I don't really know much about that. So thank you for calling though.
Yeah, because it's interesting because like I watched a little bit of Hitchens and Dawkins, and Dawkins is like very scientific, and Christopher Hitchens also could be scientific, but a lot of it is like a philosophical methodology.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because
yeah, and
thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for calling.
Yeah.
I have a super chat from somebody with a really long chemical sounding name saying thanks for everything you do. So yeah, you're welcome, and I appreciate that. Going to try to rush through calls here, pick up the pace, and yeah, if you're unmuted, you are on. Hello.
Hey, I was just wondering, if there is no God, why are you so cool?
What's that?
I was just wondering, if there is no God, why are you so cool?
I feel like that's a trick question because I have...
It is. It's me, God.
I have teenagers, and I am under no illusion that I am cool, so I feel like that's a malformed question.
God, it's me. It's Cyrus. That was a malformed question.
I knew it was a joke question anyway, but sorry, I didn't even recognize your voice, Cyrus, which is really bizarre.
Okay, that's me most days.
What's that?
I don't know. I'll stop taking up the call time. I just wanted to chime in for fun.
Well, it's really good to hear your voice, even though I embarrassingly did not recognize it, and I should have. I guess people sound different over the phone, right? Yes, this is Cyrus. He's one of the first people I interacted with a long time ago, and yeah, he's a great guy. So, thanks.
I wouldn't go that far, but I hope you have a wonderful rest of your stream.
Yeah, thank you for calling and saying I'm cool, even though it was sarcastic, and I will talk to you and hopefully see you soon.
Okay.
Bye. All right, we got our first prank call. Good for us. All right, we have 3 more. Going to run through these ones. Go ahead if you heard you're unmuted.
Hello?
Hello, hi.
Oh, okay. Oh, wait, am I on?
You are on, yes.
Oh, okay. Okay, so this is not really much of a, well, it's going to be a question, but I think I know how to address the previous caller's question on what do you take on new atheist movement and its position on philosophy.
Okay.
And this is just my personal opinion. You are free to differ, obviously, because this is a medium, but here's my position on the tip.
Okay, before you get started, sorry, before you get started, will you be able to wrap this up in about a minute or so?
Yes, we can. Okay, so long story short, positivism, the idea that everything within the realm of science, idolatry of empiricism. Empiricism being that knowledge is only known through experience. That is what is being expressed extensively throughout the new atheist movement. And the reason why I don't like this per se is because it creates it's some sort of doctrine of falsification of all claims as such. Because when I think of the question of does God exist, I don't think that's a scientific one because it's not a falsifiable one. And when I see people like Hitchens or Dawkins try and falsify that claim using some sort of science because they disprove disprove, say, creationism and whatnot, then I feel like that's a disingenuous way of going about it. So I asked your question, what do you think should be done with the new atheist movement? Should they continue doing what they're doing, or should they appeal more to the theological arguments that are being presented rather than just slap on science proves this, science proves that, and actually appeal to, you know, the philosophical positions that they seem to neglect?
Okay. Yeah, that's a good question. You ran through it pretty quick at my request, so I feel like we're a little rushed with it, but we're just kind of rushed for time. But yeah, if part of what I'm hearing is that you can't just unpack everything scientifically, you have to address the underlying thought process behind things. I'm very on board with that. And my counter apologetics is very much on less understanding science and digging deep into either science or any kind of academics on a deep level, because that's where apologists can really, if anything, just muddy topics.
No, absolutely. Like I don't think apologists should be given a pass simply because of the extremism that is prevalent when it comes to a strict empiricism within the new atheist community. That doesn't excuse the butchery of epistemology and other sects of philosophy that apologists are incredibly culpable for. But I feel as though if there is going to be any sort of honest and good faith argumentation, then it has to be done through the same playing field. You can't just slap science this and science that and have an idolatry of empiricism as a school of thought when rationalism and other sects of thought are just as credible and also reasonable modes of disproving or at least justifying your belief that there is no God. And that's another thing that I disagree with. Like, I don't believe that atheism is the lack of a belief in God, because it seems rather vague on how you mean that, because I can say right here, the mop in front of me lacks a belief in God, unless you, for example, are using that terminology to describe sentient entities specifically. But I see atheism as the claim that there is no God. However, Gnosticism or agnosticism, like Gnosticism being absolute certainty of that claim and agnosticism being the uncertainty of that claim, is what determines whether or not someone actually is certain of whether or not there is a God.
Yeah.
And that's just my own terminology of going about it. I personally think of myself as an agnostic atheist, but I am leaning onto deism, but I have to do more reading and more self-discovery until I can actually solidify my position.
Cool. Well, I got to let you go there. I appreciate that. Let me wrap up with you and maybe just give a quick final thought, but thank you for your call.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not sure the terminology, some of the terminology there, I'm not totally confident in. But yeah, I get the idea that there are different approaches you need to take, and that it can't all be purely science. And yeah, you have to, a lot of my counter apologetics and my approach to addressing religion does lean more heavily on the surface thought processes, because that's where you can untangle and intercept some of the basic flaws in religious thinking before getting too deep into it, where apologists really can muddy the waters. But that's unpacking a lot too, so I got to cut myself short as well. If you got a message, you're unmuted, and yeah, go ahead.
Hello, Prophet of Zod.
Hello.
Hi, Prophet of Zod.
Hi.
My name is ironically Christian.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but I do have a question for you, and I did catch part of that question about, using empiricism versus like philosophy. If I understood his presentation correctly. My problem here is I myself. I feel very uncomfortable talking from a philosophical versus an empiricist point of view, simply because I'm not very good at philosophy. It's very I don't know things like when I read Hegel or attempted to read Hegel, it sounded, for whatever reason, it just looked like a weird word salad. But I feel better arguing from an empirical standpoint since I know the science is better. Mm-hmm. But let me ask you this. This is the direct question. How much am I handicapping myself taking the empiricist approach, knowing that it's my best strength, as opposed to trying to use the philosophical approach, which I know is my very weakest point. How much am I handicapping myself by taking that position, if that makes sense?
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'll mute you back up just so I can address this kind of quickly and get on to the last caller. But yeah, that's a good question.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't really think that you're handicapping yourself if that's your greatest strength. I think that we all need to work from our strengths. I don't really believe in a dichotomy between philosophy and a scientific approach necessarily. There are some distinct qualities between the two. I don't know that I would call what I do philosophy, at least to the extent of really understanding philosophical terms and philosophical processes on a really technical level. I deal more in just dealing with language. I think language is one of my biggest things. I was an English teacher originally, but I rely a lot on just introspecting, finding ways to articulate some basic ideas. But that's where I said that having a lot of different voices out there, whether it's YouTube channels or just people in conversation, is very important. So I don't think you're handicapping yourself if you lean on your strength. I said that I do have a preference towards certain forms of argumentation that I think will more impact the mind of a believer without letting things get too bogged down. But I think if science is more your strength, I think you can find ways to insert that into the conversation. And I think we need all angles. I think we need science. I think we need philosophy. I think we need just regular conversational epistemological approaches. And so I don't think you're handicapping yourself if you lean on your strengths. I think you're doing the right thing. I think you just need to always introspect on whatever history you might or might not have had in religion. Be aware of who you're speaking to and what will help for them to hear, and think of where the conversation can really go in a constructive direction. So that's a lot. I'm being really quick. I'm past my 5 o'clock, but I'm going to take the last person here. So I check my list to make sure I'm on the right one. And if you heard that you're unmuted, you're our last caller. Go ahead.
Hey, Zod, I'll be real quick. Man,
Yeah, no
the last one, I can't believe it. I wanted to thank you for what you've been doing. You've helped me a bunch. I was really looking forward to seeing you in Austin at the end of June. If that's still on, I'm going to be there with my family, and I hope to meet you. But keep it up, man. Thank you.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah, I do hope to see you there too. There are not currently plans to cancel. We just have to take that as it goes, and hopefully we will be down there. And I really look forward to seeing people down there. It's a huge trip to be able to see people in person, both subscribers and other creators, and just get a sense of the actual human community that's behind all this. So hopefully that is still a go. You know, that's another one of those take it a day at a time things. But
all right, man. Cool, man. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for the call. I appreciate the feedback. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right, that was our last call. I appreciate everybody for listening, everybody who called. Thank you to Shannon for helping in the chat. Thank you for Xcult Baby for helping me manage the calls. That ended up being a better response than I had thought. We got a lot of callers in, which was great, and helping me with that. I got a few at the end of our list, so I'm taking that as a sign that that was a rigorous task. I really appreciate that. Xcult Baby was on top of taking all the calls because they don't come to Zoom in order, and so piling those all into a list for me was a great help. So didn't say enough at the beginning. Xcult Baby didn't get enough of a shout out at the start of this, but I really appreciate the help. So thank you. Again, everybody, thank you. This was a great time talking to everyone. After 2 hours at 44 years old, I am nearing the end of my endurance for sitting at a table upright. But I appreciate you all. I would like to do this again, maybe on more of a regular basis. This is a great way to connect with everybody. I might be starting to do this on a second channel or something, but I'll have to take that as it comes, whether I want to shift some of my focus this way. So always be willing to give me feedback on that. And with that, I will wrap us all up. Don't have a ceremonious way to do that. So when I hit end stream, that means we're done. And I will talk to you all soon, either in comments or Twitter or emails, or if we do another call like this. So thank you.